Hello, fellow aspirants. This is me, Dr. Jagdish Jagtap, and today's podcast will be discussing Marxism like in simplicity but in sufficient detail. There are three key ideas, that is Marxism, socialism, and communism. These have many overlapping features, but they have certain distinct criteria also. So today we'll be dealing with Marxism. So let's begin. This fellow Marx, he is regarded by many as the greatest philosopher of the 19th century, simply because of his theory of Marxism. He wrote many books, out of which our interest comes on the Communist Manifesto and most importantly the Das Kapital. This Das Kapital, it's a huge tome and in which he analyzes the economic history of the world in extreme detail, and in that he has analyzed how economy shapes the world. It's a huge tome, and if anyone of you wants to read it, you can read it, and I would recommend it to those definitely who have an issue like issue with falling asleep at night, because once you are through it 2-3 pages, you are like sure shot you will fall to sleep. So let's start with his three theories. Now, these are the key principles on which Marx's theories rest. First is historic materialism. Now, this guy had a really bad habit of naming simple things in a very difficult manner. To speak in simple English, what he meant with historic materialism is that throughout the history of the world, it is the economics, or it's the means of production and means of exchange, that is like how stuff gets produced in the world and how it is exchanged. This is the only thing which determines everything else, like the societal structure, the culture, and even religion will be determined by these two things, that is the means of production and means of exchange. That is what is meant by historic materialism. Secondly, he gives an idea of class conflict. What he means is the world has some have-nots, those who do not have any money, and it has some affluent people, those who have lots of cash. And these two classes, that is the have-nots and haves, they will always conflict with each other for control of the society. This is what he says. And lastly, he gives a theory of surplus value. What is meant by this theory of surplus value is, suppose this fellow is a laborer and he works. Suppose he is working by adding a value of 100 rupees, but he will get a salary of only 10 rupees, and the remaining 90 rupees will go to the owner or the capitalist. And since this transaction is taking place over and over again, over a period of time, the capitalist will grow very rich, while the laborer will remain poor, or the worker will remain poor. This is what is meant by surplus value. The surplus value goes to the capitalist. On these three bedrocks rests the entire foundation of Marxism. But Marx has faced a lot of criticism. The first criticism which is hurled at Marx is his theory of historic materialism is not always true. Like throughout history, there are many forces other than economic forces which determine the course of history. Secondly, the surplus value idea is flawed because suppose a worker is adding a value of 100 rupees, accepted, and he is getting a salary of 10 rupees, accepted, and this 90 rupees is going to the capitalist. But then this 90 rupees is the capitalist's wage, right? Because he is employing his mind, he is taking all the risk, and he is putting his capital inside. And for all this, doing all this, he deserves his money, like he deserves the profit. Because in today's society, it is widely accepted that anyone who is an entrepreneur, who is pulling all the resources from one place to second place, third place, combining them and creating a company, he deserves the profit, right? So this was the second accusation, that the surplus value theory is faulty. The third accusation is about class conflict. It is not necessary that the rich should fight the poor. Many times the poor will always also fight the poor, or the rich will fight the rich. So this class conflict is also flawed. Fourthly, there have been some experiments in the world, example USSR, where the socialist government came into being, but they could not realize what Marx wanted them to do. So it was a kind of failure of Marxism. And lastly, the socialism which Marx promulgated, it remained a kind of a theoretical concept, and every government which claimed that we are following Marx twisted Marx to their own ends. No one followed pure Marxism. So these are the 5 criticisms which were hurled at Marx. So does this mean that Marx entirely was like useless? Is it a useless theory? No, it is not. Definitely not. It is one of the single most contribution to the world which Marx could do, or which any philosopher could do. It is because of Marx that today we have something called as labor reforms. This took place because the capitalists got scared. They felt that if Marx, whatever path he is laying out, and if a revolution occurs, then they are doomed. So to prevent that, they instituted gradual labor reforms. So can we understand this, that because of Marxism's pressure, the capitalist world itself changed itself to suit the laborers. And a classic example of this is the concept of social security. Even in countries like USA, which are the bastions of capitalism, we have social security, universal healthcare. So all this came only because of Marxism. So this is one of Marx's biggest contributions. And secondly, he gave a message that workers of the world should unite. It was because of this message that throughout the world, workers started feeling affinity for each other. Initially, the socialist movement were divided into country-wise or region-wise dimensions, but because of his clarion call that workers of the world unite, all of them came together and they sustainably put pressure on the world. And it was because of this pressure that the International Labour Organization was formed along with the League of Nations. And this ILO has played a very significant role in improving the working conditions of people around the world. So Marx might be dead, but his philosophy will continue in some way or the other to influence the world and help the people in it. I hope this was helpful. Thank you. If you have any queries, please write in the comments. I'll reply as soon as possible. Have an awesome day.